Okay, welcome back, everyone. And we'll just dive right back into our discussion. So I think we've learned a lot about some of the really cool benefits, including that I think your three colleges together are almost like a kind of think tank, like just a place where so much creativity and so many great ideas, just really an incubator of talent and ideas can come together. Is there anything that you would add to that, or should we transition to the harder parts of this, like the parts that maybe don't flow quite as perfectly?
Well, oh, go ahead. Sorry. No, I think, we were saying during the break that about 400 students in a given year from all three of our schools will do cross-registration. That I think that's actually the headline of the BOW consortium, is that you can take classes at any of our institutions and they're credit bearing, and they're included in the cost of tuition. Three schools, three very different schedules, three academic calendars in some cases, doesn't always make for the most easy path. So our students do sometimes have to do finagle and really try to sort of think things through, but it's something that we've recognized and are working on. It's not something that we're necessarily going to go, because I think it is very valuable for our students to take classes at the other institutions. It's a great deal.
Mm-hmm. Any other issues or concerns that you guys would bring up? The only
other thing I might surface is, and it's not so much a negative, but something that students maybe want to be aware of, is that they may have to do a little bit of sort of mindset switching, right? Between the campuses use kind of different models and ways of teaching, and they're all valid and interesting in their own way. But for a student who spends 3 out of their 4 classes per semester at Olin building things and in the shop, and then they're in a seminar on Faulkner, it's a totally different mode to be thinking about. And it's a different pacing sometimes of, reading and writing papers sometimes versus some of the work that they're doing here. They're doing a project, and then most of our deliverables at the end of the semester are not exams and they're not papers, they're often presentations. Whether that's a poster presentation, an oral presentation, they're demonstrations of the things that a student has learned. And so being able to be academically nimble in a semester, to be able to kind of interact with the different modes that the schools are teaching in, is just something that they may want to think about. And I think it's part of the reason why, at least for the Olin students, and I'm not sure actually on the other 2 campuses, we actually don't let our students cross-register until sophomore year, really. They may be able to do it at the second semester or first year, but really sort of let them get some grounding, have that first year just transitioning to Olin that may be different enough from their high school, and then start to explore a little bit on the other campuses. And so I think then having a little bit more of that, sophistication, a little bit more academic maturity to say, okay, these are different styles of learning. I've got to get my brain, situated to them. And so being able to manage that can just be something to be aware of.
Mm-hmm. Jess, do you have anything to add, or do you think they've covered the challenges?
I think they've covered the challenges, right? I mean, to move more into the positives, right? Like, if in case someone out there is wondering, well, how do you, if you don't have a car, right, or a bike, how do you get, and we're only a couple of miles away, but there's a shuttle bus system that runs periodically. And so I guess that could be right. You have to kind of map out when you'd be able to catch it in order to get, to the other campus to take your class. But, if we venture into the benefit beyond the academic realm, right, that then opens up all 3 campuses to be places where if you just want to get off campus, you've got friends at one of the other institutions. We have 175 clubs and organizations between our 3 institutions, and a lot of events, right, that are open, right? So, for that moment, right, where the student at Olin is like, okay, well, I just, I want to get to know some new or different people, right? It really expands your opportunity, but in a very easy, simple way, right? To be able to just hop on the bus and, go to see, a concert or an event on one of the other campuses.
Mm-hmm. And these are buses that are, I know there's some safety oriented parents out there. I just want to make the point that these are buses just for the college students of these schools. So they're not hopping on a city bus. At 2 o'clock in the morning, this is a school oriented. This is just for the students and faculty.
This is the BOW bus.
Yeah.
The BOW shuttle.
Yeah, exactly. So would you say that the social lives are very intertwined between the 3 campuses? Is it really common to like for Wellesley and Babson students to go to a party at Olin or vice versa, or just, maybe even go. I mean, all of those things kind of happen, even if you don't have a friend that you knew from high school at those institutions.
I think the opportunity is there. I don't, thankfully, I don't know what the students are doing socially. I think
Right,
that's
fair
for
enough.
everybody. The opportunity is there, and I think it complements the fact that we're also 3 of 40 different colleges and universities in the greater Boston area. So I do think locally, yes, it gives students the ability to get outside the confines of our campus and head down to Wellesley, or go across the way to Olin. But I think there's also that opportunity to go into Boston and see students from other schools as well. So they kind of get the best of both worlds in terms of being able to venture out.
Yeah, we're America's college town for a reason. Beantown, Boston, 250,000 college students when college is in session. So, you have the best of a smaller residential experience at each of our institutions, but those all of the amazing sort of culture, arts opportunities of an urban area. I mean, one of the questions I get asked a lot, people have these preconceived notions of a women's college. How do you have fun? Do the students there go to parties? Yes, they go to parties, right? On our campus, but also other campuses, right? So, and again, the bus makes it easy to get from place to place and to take advantage of. But, it's really a personal choice. We definitely all have students who are interested and explorers, and others who want to, hang back a little bit more and just chill out with friends on our own campuses.
Mm-hmm.
I have joked that there are students who I don't think actually ever leave Olin's campus because they're just so invested in all the things that they're doing here. And there are just as many students who make it a point to get into Boston every week, or who are parts of clubs and organizations on the other campuses, partially just to expand, have a structured way sometimes to expand that social network. We certainly take advantage, because we are small, we can't offer everything. We certainly take advantage of things like spiritual life on the other 2 campuses. We have some clubs and organizations, but being able to actually access religious chaplains on the other campus for our students is huge. And so being able to have that kind of automatic expansion, and then you can also level up, to the greater Boston area too.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Well, Emily, they use our gym. The students
That's right. Exactly.
Can use our athletic center. So, if we're talking about inclusion, it is a really nice way to show that our campuses aren't just closed off and, you have to register at the guard gate if you even want to come in. You definitely can just come on to the campus, all of our campuses, and use the resources.
Mm-hmm. I was wondering too, I mean, do you ever have a situation where certain classes are just very crowded and so the students from the other campus are just lower priority? Or is one of the benefits of kind of the relative small size of all your schools that there's always space if someone wants a class?
I've heard that there being space constraints.
Right. I mean, my sense is that if someone really wants something, right, like initially a student goes to sign up for a class and it's at capacity, right, but they reach out to the professor, right? We're that kind of community where, they're going to go to the lengths they can to make sure, okay, we've definitely got a seat that we can, create for you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're probably the most restricted. I think being the smallest, we may have some more, not necessarily firm caps, because Jess is absolutely right. The student that asked that question really wants to be in that class. But I do think that we have some courses that, because of the project-based style of them, they're a little bit number bound in terms of what they are. We also have Babson, Olin and Wellesley have a 4+1 program where there are students at Wellesley that, if they want to pursue kind of a 5th year, where their 4th and 5th year is mostly at Olin, they're going to get to the end of that 5 years with 2 degrees, one from Wellesley and one from Olin. So though the students who are in that pipeline or in one of our certificate programs across the campuses, they're going to get priority, certainly for the courses that they would need for that 4+1 or for a certificate program. But yeah, I think there's we all have the small college environment of being as ready to answer a student's need as much as we can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, I read about the 4+1 program and I thought, how awesome is that? Because while most small liberal arts and sciences colleges have something like that, you have to go to a whole nother school, etc. And in this one, you keep your same community. You just kind of are taking classes at the different institute. I mean, it just seemed so seamless. And so wonderful to me that every single time I talk to a young woman who is thinking about engineering, but not 100% sure, I'm going to point her towards Wellesley, like absolutely without a doubt.
Yeah. Because imagine what kind of resources an individual institution would have, right, to have their own full engineering program that would match the caliber of Olin.
Mm-hmm.
The other challenge is that, maybe a student looked at Wellesley and Olin, but wasn't quite sure, right, that engineering was right for them at that moment, that they were 17 and 18 and had no idea what they were going to do with the rest of their lives, right? So it's just a different path, right, to enroll at a liberal arts institution like Wellesley, have a really wonderful opportunity to explore, right? We do have engineering faculty, right, in the courses that they take at Olin. And, as they, say, yes, this really is for me, to really have all the steps laid out in front of them for how to do that 4+1 program with a dual degree and have the best of both worlds. I mean, this is a real strategic use of resources that we're talking about as it relates to all three of the BAU institutions.
Mm-hmm. I also think for the students who I might recommend to Babson and Olin. I mean, every year I talk, like I was talking to a student who likes engineering. I mean, he went into engineering, but he also really enjoyed Latin. And it was really tough to find the right place for him where he could really spend a lot of time continuing to study Latin. And this again feels like kind of the perfect opportunity.
Classic faculty would welcome that student. So
yeah, exactly.
I hope they apply to you.
Yeah, exactly. I actually told him that if he wanted to be a Latin major, he would be a little bit sought after almost because so and I'm guessing, so we've mentioned some of the social and extracurricular functions. Are there particular ones that come up for you, like theater productions? I mean, I don't know if this actually falls into it, but I was on your website and I was looking up something called Constructing and Performing the Self. That's actually a class.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a theater. Like, can you tell me a little bit more about some of the classes like that? Or
yeah, so that class in particular is taught by a theater professor at Babson and a psychology professor at Olin, which you don't anticipate that I'm going to say a psychology professor at Olin. So not every faculty member at Olin is actually an engineer. We've got an anthropologist, we have a historian, we've got a few folks that are not in the STEM area, but they teach a course where essentially they work with the students to construct a monologue, a real deep and personal and compelling story that they workshop over the course of the semester, that they then have a production that was just last week where the students then perform them as part of this kind of storying ourselves kind of review of all of these really beautiful and meaningful stories. And so the faculty member at Olin, who's the psychologist, his research is all on identity and identity development. And so really kind of marrying how do you, through story, uncover, discover, lean into, unpack, sort of different pieces of who you are and understanding how you came to be the origin stories of the different pieces of yourself. And so they beautifully come to bear in this theatrical performance, which is a great one. It's nice.
That's a good one.
yeah, that one just, again, these are all things that make me want to go back to college. So, although not be graded ideally, because I finished grad school not that long ago and that final exam was not fun. So, so I would like to know, like, if we could kind of go around and talk about sort of who you think really would be a perfect match for your institutions, and hopefully also take advantage of this consortium. And then if there are any student where maybe it just wouldn't work for them. So I don't know, Jess, would you start?
I think Wellesley is a place for, high achieving, curious women who are interested in making a difference in the world. Our motto, sed ministrari, non-ministrari. See, there I should have taken a Latin class myself. Not to minister, but not to minister. Ugh, now I'm really going to get it wrong. But it's really about not how much you know, but what you do with what you know. So there's really an empowerment to activate and actualize the knowledge here, right? So we want women who are going to go out and make a difference in the world. So, I think on occasion, I will hear someone say, well, gee, I want this quieter student to come out of her shell. I think, Wellesley would be a great place. And I actually don't know that we're the ideal place for a student like that, because we're a community of voices, right? Not everyone raises their hand and is the first to speak up in class, but we're a pretty passionate group. So, if that is something that you want to be empowered by the people around you and the amazing things that they do, then we might be a good community for that kind of student.
Yeah, people assume small means good for shy students, and that's just not always the case. It can be, but not at every small institution. All right, Emily.
So I think obviously we only have engineering. So I think, Jess made a good point earlier where it's like, if you're not 100% sure about engineering, Olin is a risky bet, right? Because we have we have all degrees that are engineering. So someone who has an interest in engineering is certainly somebody who's going to be good for us. Strong background in math and science. We do need to see things like calculus and physics in high school. But really what distinguishes kind of an Olin engineer from a whole host of other engineering schools is this collaborative piece, and the kind of that similar, there's so many echoes between the things that we're talking about, but the engineering as a means to improving society and contributing into the world in a meaningful way. And so I think the student who's perfectly content to code alone in a room is not a great Olin student. We also, because of the collaborative environment, we also have tons of open-ended inquiry in terms of the way that we teach things. So a student who wants to know how to get an A, also not a good student for Olin. Like, we are oftentimes, the faculty are like, well, this is the project. It's very open-ended. Where are you going to take it? And the student who wants to know, no, how do I do it? Like, there's a lot of discovery and sort of self-actualization that happens for students around how do I scope this thing? How do I know what I need to know? And it's a very kind of it's very much grounded in sort of a design thinking, but a very reflective piece of the process is, how do I actually start? How do I get to doing these kinds of things? And so we're rarely, we do scaffold a design process for students in the earlier years, but certainly as they advance, there's a lot that's independent. The student is the driver. And so someone who's maybe really, motivated by external forces like grades, or, wants to be able to repeat the path that they've been told, is not necessarily going to find a lot of comfort in the academic experience at Olin. And so that's sometimes why I joke about the makers and the breakers, right? They need to be sort of the tactile builders, the folks who are okay with a failure, because failure is a learning moment, as opposed to someone who failure is it's a affront sort of to their identity. So kind of the how do you find that place in the middle?
This is why I always go first, because I wind up just repeating everything what they said. But I think, with my challenge representing a business school is that there are some assumptions that go into, there are a lot of differing assumptions that go into the business degree. One is, you're there to be a business person. You're going to be an accountant, and it's all about the numbers and the 5-year plan and how long it's going to take you to make $1 million, or in these days, $1 billion. How are you going to buy Twitter? And it's not necessarily, it's not that, but it's also on the other side of the spectrum. We always say the word entrepreneurship a lot. And I notice I've been saying entrepreneurial leadership, which is a little bit different, but I have a lot of students who say, well, I'm not sure I want to start a business. What if I want to go work at Goldman Sachs, or what if I want to run for Congress one day? And that is actually what entrepreneurial leadership is. It's learning the skills, the creativity, the risk-taking, the collaboration, the sort of the magical thinking that goes into coming up with an idea and inciting change within an organization or within your organization. And so the students who we have, similar to what Jess and Emily are saying, which is good because this means we're a really successful consortium, is that our students are really tinkerers, wanderers. They're very curious. I always joke that, if you go into Chipotle with a bunch of Babson students, by the time we come out, they're going to say, well, the line could have been different. You could probably make like 7 more burritos an hour if you just put the left and not the right. And they're always just sort of looking to see how it can be better and how can the world be better. And so that's the biggest joy of working with these students, is you just see that not only are they thinking about how to make things better, they're actually doing it, and they know how to advocate for themselves, find the resources that they need, and it also might be at Olin and at Wellesley, and really actually making it happen. And whether it be here at Babson or behind or beyond. And I think, the student for whom Babson might not be a great fit is, the person who wants to be a doctor. You're probably not going to be a doctor with a business degree. We don't have organic chemistry, and I don't think you can get your pre-med and at Wellesley and your business degree. And I think that's one thing. Within the consortium, we complement each other. But we also are very sure to not make promises that you can be an engineer at Babson, or you can be get your entrepreneurial leadership and everything you need at Wellesley and be a doctor. All that stuff. We complement, and we bring depth to each other's educational systems. We're not a substitute.
Mm-hmm. What's really notable for me is how actually, for your institutions wouldn't be good for any student who just wants to be given a set path, right? Like it's very, even though you approach, I can see, I sort of think about how there's certain problems in the world that we really obviously need multidisciplinary approaches. Climate change, I think, Emily, you mentioned one is there's sociological, implications, there's cultural, there's obviously biological, there's economic, there's, it's the problem is so complex. And I just feel like a place like BOW is sort of the perfect combination of different people to potentially solve those kinds of things. Do you have any plans to do something like that, or are you already working on? I want you guys to start a think tank, basically. That's what I'm trying to get across. So, I'm sure your faculty are working on stuff like this. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I think what you're alluding to, Sally, right, is that it's this synergy, right, of our three institutions that makes us so successful, right? So synergy, I once heard described as 1 + 1 = 3, right? That what we are together is so much more than the sum of our individual parts, right? And this shared philosophical approach that you just heard the three of us describe as we talked about who would thrive at our institutions. I think whether we're talking about cancer or climate change, I think you got a great chance at making headway and success if you have some Wellesley, Babson, and Olin students all together in the room, right? Because it's what we collectively bring together through the mindset and what you learn in the 4 years at our institutions, maybe 5 if you're in the 4+1 with the dual degree program, right? That I think will make the change in the world. And I think that's the other thing that we have that is so similar. We all have this, deep, abiding, philosophical belief and mission in what our students are going to do as they leave, right, the greater Wellesley area with the knowledge that they've gained from our institutions. So I just think it makes such a great collaboration.
Mm-hmm. I've been thinking about that joke of a rabbi and a priest walk into a bar. I can sort of see the 3 BOW students walk into a bar and sort of how they approach the particular joke. So we do actually have a few minutes left, not too many, but any last things that you would share either about this consortium or about your particular institutions, even if it's just that sort of very personal element of what you love most about doing your job every day?
One of the more casual things about the consortium that I really appreciate is there's actually there are BOW innovation funds. So there's a set of funds that each institution contributes to. And they can fund projects big and small, right? So it can be, faculty coming together to do research. It can be, supporting, students doing something together, or it can be the BOW book club, so a way for bringing different students together to have different conversations, bringing faculty and staff from the different institutions together to do things. And so there's something really lovely about not just is it one faculty member reaching out to another campus, but we actually have these innovation funds to say, what can we do together? And I personally really enjoy when we do the BOW counselor tour. So when we actually, use the opportunity to introduce high school counselors and CBO mentors to our 3 campuses, and it's sort of, you want to come see 3 incredibly aligned, different, unique, mission-driven institutions. it's a great couple of days on campus for those folks to be able to understand a broad range, like a broad range of students that they may bring to any one of us. And so that's a great moment for us when and it's part of the reason why I always love doing these things, because hearing what the others are doing, it just is a good reminder of why this works so well. But it's a casual sort of selfish thing, but I love when we do those events together, because it does have there is this kind of, excitement that builds around like, oh yeah, to your joke, an Olin student, a Babson student, and a Wellesley student tackle a problem and it's solved. Right? It sort of feels like it's the kicker there a little bit.
Okay. All right. I really apologize, but now I do actually have to go. Thank you all so much. This was such a fun conversation. I mean, absolutely. One of the most most amount of fun I've had doing one of these. So, all right. So now for the listeners, thank you so much for listening this whole time. I think you'll really enjoy our show next week when our regular host, Beth Heaton, will be talking with guests about the regular decision results for this entering class. And finally, I want to remind everyone that you don't have to listen to our shows live. Every show is accessible 24/7 on the Voice America website. And of course, you can go to YouTube for our videos. And if you want to search for a particular show topic, remember you can go to our blog page at blog.getintocollege.com. That's blog.getintocollege.com. And last, don't forget, we're here every Thursday, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. Bye.